All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back here to Kickin It With Knuble, episode 17. Mike, we are back. A little bit of Flyers talk this week. No guest. Back to regular stuff. And how we doing? How are things?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. We're digging out here in Michigan. A lot of lake effect snow. Not that anybody wants to know the weather, but it's been a fun week and a lot of snow, some fires, a little Flyers hockey, some fires in the fireplace, some Flyers hockey,
Nice.
and it's been a nice week.
Yeah, there you go.
Mhm,
Sorry to hear
mhm.
about your Lions. I had to mention that off the bat. Not the best effort.
Oh, my Lions. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
thinking my Lions. Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
We were in Minnesota and up there and kind of got in the game late, and it was exciting there. And you knew it was gonna be high scoring, but that was the whole state was waiting 2 weeks for that one,
uh-huh,
and then,
yeah,
kind of fell apart there a little bit, and
yeah,
2 coaches already left to take head coaching jobs, which is great. Part of the job of head coaches and even in the National Football League and the NHL is to groom assistants
yeah,
and get assistants, they're ready to go for their own jobs, so it's good to see, and I think it's a great thing as a coach when you've had assistants move on, and not that they're leaving, but they're moving on and going on to bigger and better things, and that's a great reputation to have as a head coach. And probably seen that with Torts a bunch. You see that with other guys that you know some of their assistants move on to head jobs. Always a good thing.
yeah. No, it's awesome. I think it's great. Like when you see guys like finally get their shot, it's so crazy to me with the
Mhm.
NFL how like you get it, and it's like during the playoffs. Like, I think Kellen Moore with the Eagles, he's interviewed for like 3 head coaching jobs, like in the middle of the playoffs. Like, could you imagine an assistant
Yeah,
coach in the NHL in the
yeah.
middle of Stanley Cup playoffs, 7 game series interviewing for a head coaching job like next season? Like that's crazy.
It's always interesting, right? And some of these jobs and these, we've talked about this as coaches before, and it's like you wanna make the playoffs because it's great for your career, and you want that and the feather in your cap and your resume as a coach, and, I've taken teams to playoffs, but, season ends mid-April for an NHL coach, say, example, and then, typically right around there, within a week, there's 5 to 6 jobs open every year, and, guys who are having playoff success and, you know, can't really go for those jobs,
Right.
and the guys who haven't had success get to go in those interviews and be relevant. So teams take a chance sometimes. Maybe they're like, well, we're not going to hire anybody. We're going to wait till playoffs, but then you might miss out on a good candidate, but or if you're waiting on a guy, you think you might get a guy who's on a nice playoff run, whose contract's up, or you've heard he's leaving, and I don't know. It's a little bit of a roll in the dice situation. It's hard, and it's very difficult on GMs at that time of year to to settle in, and sometimes it's hard to find your coach who's going to coach your team next year.
Right. Yeah, it's nuts. Like, like you said, like, it's a lot of trying to figure out, who you want next year and whatnot, and trying to find the right mix and all that too. But, um, yeah, I mean, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
Flyers they've been playing pretty well. I know we talked, we had Simone and then, Hatch last week, and we haven't really talked,
Yep.
kind of looked at the team or anything like that since, um, really the end of 2024. And when you look at the month of January, a lot of stuff's changed. Danny came in and talked the other day. We'll talk about that in a minute here. But Flyers have played well since the Cutter Gauthier game, which was the crazy game in Philly. The fans were going nuts, and there was the FU chants and all that. And Jamie's better and everything. And Drysdale scored and all that. And it was like, all right, Flyers kind of just had like it felt like a little bit of like a coming out party this year for like some guys, because it was like some guys were just kind of quiet most of the year, and guys like Tippett and Forrester and some other guys have struggled a bit, and that seems like it seems like right now, at least for us talking right now, that's kind of been the kind of turnaround of the season here.
Yeah, I see some nice consistent play and some balance and stuff. And I was looking up something. I said, "What's this note I made?" It said December. Uh, in December alone, they gave and I think part of the success is I think goals against have gone down.
Hmm.
And that's a big deal because I had made a note here in December. 4 games in December, they gave up 7 goals a game, right? And obviously, you lose those games.
Right.
And then in January, They've given up 5 goals one time, and that was on January 2nd, and that was a loss, and they have not lost a game with less than, you're only losing games giving up 3 and 4, and that gives you a chance. So the bottom line is you're not gonna win a lot of games if looking to score 5 and 6 a
Yeah.
night. And the Flyers, I think the goals against have been down, and aren't having those bad nights where you give up 6 and 7. Those are insurmountable. You're not going to score your way out of that. Edmonton might be able to do it because you can let Draisaitl and McDavid go, and there might be a few other teams that can kind of roll the dice on games like that.
Yeah.
But for the Flyers, I think a lot of this coincides. A lot of the success coincides with goals against and being on being much lower, and then getting later in the games and turning them into 20-minute games where you're tied or maybe one down or one up going in the third, and shortening the game up. So I think that's played to their advantage. And obviously, like I said, the primary thing is if you start keeping goals against down, you got a chance to win more nights, and you're gonna come out on top a little bit more. So I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah. No, you're right. And, I was going to bring this up, and it goes along with what you were saying, giving up less goals and whatnot. They've allowed the second fewest shots on net per game since the holiday break. It's 23.8. So about 24 shots a night is what they give up, which if you're doing
And
that,
and that's
you're basically like at that point, if you're doing that, you know, and then, on top of that, Urson, who's 7-1-0, he's got a 1.156 goals against average and a 9.35 save percentage just a holiday break. Like those two things with what you just said, like that's why they're, 5-on-1 since January 11th.
Yeah, no, I mean that's great team defense. That shows the buy-in of not only the goaltending settling down a little bit, and not only a defenseman, but the 5-man game and being responsible, and probably not not giving up great 3-on-2s and 2-on-1s and sloppy play 150 feet away from your goal, where a lot of these start to generate on a bad pinch or getting beat out of the corner, or just making a bad decision, and the offense racing by you and creating a 3-on-2. So that shows a lot of like overall buy-in on everybody. And obviously you're giving up 23, 24 shots a game. That means you're probably giving up 9 to 10 really good chances tops,
Yeah.
and so those are, that's kind of winning stuff. When you start stringing that along, you do that repeatedly. That's a good way to turn a lot of these tight games into wins.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mike, we talked about it like earlier in the season. Like they were winning. A lot of the games they were winning were, 3-1, 3-2, 2-1. And some nights it's a little more scoring, but they get the empty net or it's 5-3. You know what I mean? Like they find ways to score when they need it. And I don't know if they're gonna make the playoffs. They're right there. But really you look at the standings and you look at where the entire NHL Eastern Conference is and whatnot. Um, it's from the first team in the first wild card spot in Columbus right now to the Red Wings, who are in eighth. It's separated by 6 points. So
Mhm.
it's really close. And then right behind them is the Islanders with 45 points, and they're only 2 points back of Detroit. So like they're right there too. And when you're the Flyers and you look at some of these other teams, the Flyers got a 3-game win streak. They're right now they're best streak out of all these teams right there. And obviously, Mike, as you know, like when you're able to pull points together, like that's kind of huge. And they've been doing that. And like is this is tonight is the Rangers, and I think this is the fifth game of 9 in a row against teams that are in like an East kind of swing.
Mhm.
So it was
Mhm.
Columbus, the Islanders, Rangers, Devils, Detroit, and they're all kind of in there. They had the 2 wins on top of that in a row there with Anaheim and Florida. They won those 2 games. That was 4 points. And then, all that kind of added into that, but they're getting points against these teams. And like, the inner division games are huge. And obviously, that because when you played, the schedule was different, and it was, 6 times a year you'd play Jersey and 8 times a year you'd play Pittsburgh and things like that. And it's not like that
Mhm.
anymore. And when you have stretches like this where it's all metro teams and eastern teams, and when you're right there in a playoff, playoff race, like, so early in the season, it's good to, stack up points against, interdivision opponents and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, that's points they can't have either, which is, you get it, and they're almost like little 4-point swings, right?
Yep.
So those are all super important. And if you can get a number of these, any of them, get them to OT at least. A number of them don't. The if you can just reduce this down, it'd be a good target to the Four Nations, break here. Like, it's probably about 8 or 9 games when you say to the break here, and saying, hey, how many of these, like, at the end of this 8 or 9, like, can we get points in seven of 9, or if it's 10 or 11 games, can we get points in 8 and 9? And they, like, get them to overtime at least and grab something. So those are the ones you're scratching for in April, right? And it's a like a nice um, defined chunk of time here, and you feel like you're playing, and it's and you get a break. You can there's a 2 week break in there or whatever it is, 10 days, whatever, and then it's a finite portion of time of the season where you can say, all right, let's play. Let's see if we can't play like 800 hockey here toward the end, and really focus on the small term and small time period, and against a lot of teams in our conference and our division, and steal those points, and we gain them, and that's a big swing come April when everybody's scratching at the last point or two there.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It's 9 games in 17 days to the break.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
pretty good stretch, and a lot of those games, like I said, they're all mostly Eastern opponents. They go away for 2 games, Colorado, Utah, and then they're right back. It's Washington and Pitt, and they come back, and
Mhm.
they got a home and home against Pitt pretty much right when they come back too. So it's a lot of Eastern opponents and whatnot, and all that. And you're right. Like, when they're able to, stack up points and get that 4-point swing, it's huge. And that's why they're, kind of right there in this whole swing. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, Mike. We can, kind of jump around a little bit. Uh, if they do, I've always kind of looked at it like, I obviously, I'm always kind of the one that always wants them to win and all that. Like, I never root for them to lose. But I do, at the same time, I understand the idea of, um, it could be better in the long run if they missed and get a higher end pick and whatnot. But, we've talked about this before. It's not something that the players necessarily want to do or want to buy into or anything like that. I do think that they want to make the playoffs. Um, I don't know if they will. I think if, you get the rest of the season, and you get, some of the goaltending, from Urson, and you really just needed one guy out of those 3 to kind of just come out and really kind of put it together. I think that would have helped them. And um, they're getting it from Urson. I think that's why you're starting to see that. But, for you right now, when you see, like, I think it's a little less than half a season, it's probably like 35, 36 games, something like that. Do you kind of envision them making the playoffs right now or no?
Well, it's again, you touched on the standings, how tightly packed everything is, right? So that's like maybe a good winning streak or a bad losing streak, which can make a difference there,
Yeah.
And I think, and then, you wonder as your team shapes up, you wonder what your GM might do as you get close to the trade deadline. But it gets really hard to make trades when everybody else is really close to it too, right? And everybody's trying to stand pat and find that um, one guy or 2 guys that they're willing to either, part with something decent, and you're gonna have to part with something decent, because like you say, everybody, you got to make, if you GM to GM, they're like, you got to make this worth my while here,
Right.
like, we're right in the mix too, we're right with you, we're right on your heels, or we're one step ahead of you, and like, I really got to gain something out of this. As far as the players go, of course, they're going to try like hell. Like, they're trying like hell to make the playoffs, and those types of teams get real dangerous come the spring, because they've been grinding. I don't think they tire out so much in the beginning. But they've been grinding. So when they do step in, if they do make it and step into playoff mode, it's just like it's more of the same. They feel like they've been playing with that desperation for a long time. But and again, there's going to be great conversations amongst GMs and teams really pulling their brain trust together over this break, and really deciding, okay, here's what we're going to do, or this is kind of our thought here, or should we be thinking this way? Are we buyers? Are we sellers? What are we doing here? Are we being how realistic are we being in our chances? And whether that is getting the right player or having somebody come back from injury or somebody getting injured, is the wrong guy getting injured is the difference between getting in and getting out. So again, I just think it's in the short term, having a great short term goal is to really grind it out. Like you said, these 9 games in 17 days and really play, see if he can't, have 18 points, see if he can't get 13, 14 points. And that would be a huge boost,
Right.
to head into that break and come back from that break really refreshed.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. I kind of feel like that's where I'm at too. Um, I keep seeing these points, and they get wins, and they got points in their last six, and it's like, all right, now you got the Rangers tonight, who are right there with you. You just beat the Islanders, and they've kind of struggled all year, and Jersey's been. I think last night. Last night was the first time Jersey scored, I think it was 4 goals in a game since, like, December 27th. So it was, like, almost a month. So they were really struggling, and, I don't know if they're gonna come out of that, but I think the Flyers are getting some of these teams at a good time too, which is good, and, they've been able to, put up points and whatnot. Um, One other thing too, Mike, is, no more 3 goalies. Kolosov got sent down.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's clear that was easily the better decision. Fedotov would have had to go on waivers. He came out of that, not playing for a month and all that, and he was fine. Like, he came in and started to just kind of get back to right what he was doing. And we touched on this before, and he wasn't. I didn't necessarily think it was right for him to just not play. And he, kind of came in and proved that. And now, Kolosov is back with 𝐊𝐈𝐂𝐊𝐈𝐿, and it's much more easier. Torch said today in practice it didn't really bother him. I don't know if you've ever, I'm not sure if in Philly if you played with 3 goalies on a team, but I'm sure that's not the easiest thing in terms of practice and whatnot. And you got 3 guys, and they're all sharing the net and whatnot. And they had to get really creative at practice in terms of using them in different drills and stuff. So that's finally over, and Kolosov gets down, and Fedotov is back as the number 2.
Yeah, and I mean, a number of things there. I think one, it finally settled down a little bit. The
Yeah,
goaltending situation, we kind of it gave it enough time for their sample to kind of figure things out. And number two, the fact, I mean, he said that he didn't have to clear waivers, is big too, because you need to get him playing. You need him to have his games. Kolosov down in Lehigh, and you don't want to lose him from the organization either. So I mean, it's kind of convincing him. I know he had a problem with where they wanted him to report in the beginning of the year, and
yeah,
you know sometimes you've got to get over here and get going, and the team's really got to either convince them or put their foot down and say this is what's going to happen. And so no, nobody's privy to those conversations, but there's a number of ways probably they probably try to convince them. But again, you have to be very thrilled that you don't lose them, that you don't
yeah,
have to, that you do get to put them on their waiver free. And I think for him, he's got to show the maturity and be like, this is actually really good for me, and I need to be playing down here and in that in the big picture. And it shouldn't matter, again, long term. He's like, well, I'd like to play in North America a long time in the NHL. Maybe this is a little bit of a semi step back that I got to take to move forward again. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
So it's, in practice, it's probably a lot better for both guys. They feel like they get their adequate reps in. There's a little bit more of a rhythm to it and a vibe. And, the goalie coach doesn't have to be to worry about working 3 guys in or counting shots and everybody's getting their reps in. You just worry about your guys. They have their nets, and there's comfort in that too for goalies. So it's and they want to see that our work is recognized here too,
right,
right? And we're working really hard here too, and we're getting better, and we're solidifying our position. So now you know that's a little bit of a reward for the two that are still in Philadelphia as well.
right. Yeah, no, 100%. I think especially for Urson too. Like, I I know we just touched on it a little bit, but like Urson, I mean, he came in and he just and it just felt easier for him to make a save. I think they had problems a little bit earlier in the year in terms of like a lot of the goalies would kind of get sniped sometimes, and you'd see that where it was like there were just goals that just could not go in that were going in, and it didn't matter, you know, it didn't really matter what kind of goal it was. It was just a really bad timely goal, and they kept having that in a
Yeah.
lot of games, and obviously like momentum's a huge thing, and when you have it, you can't lose it, and when you don't have it, you have to fight everything to get back. And I know Dan Carcillo talked about that when we had him on, um, from Joel Quenville, and just how much he was really adamant on momentum and whatnot. And obviously, like that's huge. And when you have moments in games and when goals are given up, it's like it can just be, just backbreakers. And that was the biggest thing
Mhm.
for a while. But Urson, so I think, started to really slow it down. I think they made it easier in front of him. I think the defense has played better. And I think that kind of ties into the next topic here, which was Danny's presser. And I think it's hard, Mike, because Danny and Jonesy and Dan Helferty, they've been very open about all this and kind of where they're going with the team. Um, I've kind of looked at this like Danny has three things to juggle, and it's obviously the on ice roster changes, the team play, whatnot, the player culture and everything. We talked about that last episode a little bit with Hatch on how Homer was really um, really hands on with that and made sure. And I obviously, like everyone said it before, just about how much the Flyers were a family and how much everything, if the player needed something, like Mr. Schneider was there. And obviously, I'm sure you can attest to that too. And then also, just the all ice culture, getting the fans back and whatnot. So like, it's a lot of balls in one court to kind of juggle and kind of mess with. And um, I think they've been trying to be patient. I don't know about you, looking at some of the quotes and whatnot, but did you have any thoughts the other day on Danny's presser and any of the stuff that was mentioned?
Well, I know again, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing he was talking about, or the headline I was reading, or the article I read was mostly, about finding that center, or whatever that number one center they need. That the problem is the rest of the league's looking for it. And I mean, he talked his way through it, and he's like, "Hey, I'd love to get one, but teams aren't exactly giving them up, and
Right.
they tend to lock them in, and so it's and again, yeah, I think we talked a couple, maybe an episode or two ago again, like the constant chat, the constant talk about to other GMs and constant thinking how we can retool and tinker it's an everyday thing. It's consuming. For Jonesy, for Danny. I mean, it's all they do is think about how we're going to make this team better. And so you have to do it in the right way, what they consider the right way, and for their philosophy and how they've seen things work, how they want them to work, and it's not that easy, and
Yeah.
like you say, a lot of people are in a race right now, and they're not looking to cut, a lot of their low hanging fruit. They're not looking to get rid of things right now. So a lot of people are in the mix, and like you said, if you get a star, you have a star on your team. I mean, we've seen it for years. The stars get locked up. You know, they're not exactly available. And if you do get a guy, he's going to be 32 or 33, and then you got to kind of say, well, is he still number one? And is this somebody we really want to go after? So that's hard. That was the biggest takeaway is like, hey, we're trying here, but it's again, we're not gonna if the right deal comes along, obviously anybody can be involved, but like it takes two to tango, and you got to find somebody who's willing to part with a hell of a player for you to get in on it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of how I saw it too. Like I looked at it, I was watching it, and I'm thinking to myself, like there really isn't a ton that they can do. It's like, you have some guys that you can shop. He's mentioned he hasn't talked with any of the RFAs. Um, and I
Mhm.
have no issue with that because you look at some guys and you look at last season compared to this season, it's a little bit different in terms of production and whatnot. And I'm glad he's being patient. The problem with it is it's so hard for people, I think, to understand that is because they've struggled for so long. You know what I mean? So it's like you're trying to, you know, preach patience and this and that and the other thing, and it's like it's hard, and I get it, but at the same time, they came into a rough situation, and I feel like you got to give him a little bit of time to get out of it. And I think that's kind of what we're going through right now. And this season was, we've said this all year. This was kind of the growing pains of the rebuild a little bit. And when I look at it too, I think that, the number one center was a big thing. I think it's clear that they're going to definitely sell at the deadline again. I think, Briere kind of hinted at that a little bit too. And I don't think there's any reason why they shouldn't. The interesting thing was Ristolainen for me, Mike. I don't know if that was a little bit of maybe just like I think the one thing they struggled with a lot in the past couple of years was a lot of information kind of getting out and things like that. And I think they try to keep it really quiet and they're pretty tight lipped. And I think Danny was really trying to be quiet on Risto. He mentioned he said we get excited about training him and thinking about the kind of return we can get, but I'm not shopping him. I'm not trying to get rid of him. I don't know how much of that I believe. That's just my opinion. I think some of that might be a little bit of a maybe a kind of public smoke screen to maybe on the other side. I don't know. But then again, I look at it in the back of my head and I think about last year and when they lost Sean Walker and how much they talked about that and how much they missed Walker and whatnot. And you think about Ristolainen and you're like, yeah, he's got a point, especially when you think of the contract and kind of where he's at in his career and whatnot. And he's kind of made a career of himself in Philly too, Ristolainen. So I don't know. I think they're definitely gonna, maybe sell at the deadline. I do think they're gonna do that. But in terms of Ristolainen, I don't know. That was a little different for me. I thought that was and I look, I could be way off. Maybe he actually legit is telling the truth and that's that. But
Mhm.
I just thought that was, I think they're trying to be pretty quiet on that front.
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, what to read of that. That could go a lot of different ways, But
Mhm.
when I see that kid play, I mean, he's a big load. He's a good right shot defenseman, and these guys don't fall off trees either. He's like six. What is he? 6'3", 6'4". Like he's a
Yeah.
big guy and likes to get involved. Throws his body around a little bit and decent skills with a puck. I don't know. Yeah, and so that's like a guy who's super valuable to somebody else, but super valuable to you too. So
Right.
it's they're always a hard one. They're always a hard one to judge. But again, and you were talking about being patient. Like people shouldn't. You can't like align patience with being complacent, and it's like think about if you're going to go buy a house, like you're patient buying a house means you're going to look at a lot of houses. I'm not going to jump on one, but I'm going to look at a lot of houses and think about things, but I'm not looking at the houses. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like I'm gonna get out there and look. So again, patience is, I don't know, like it connotates like almost like a complacency and we're waiting around. Like nobody's waiting there. It's you're actively pursuing and actively looking and constantly thinking and running scenarios and asking people within your organization, your trusted people, like, what about this? What do you think of this? And just trying to spark some debate and spark a little brainstorm and I wasn't looking at it from that angle and
Mhm.
here's maybe something we could do. And so it's constant. So I mean, surprised there, it's there's a lot of names you can probably get involved and that are being tossed around and figure that what they can try and get for it or do with or not do anything with.
Right. Yeah, and, and again, it's hard because I think and I agree. I think people just kind of assume that they're just doing nothing, and just kind of sitting there and sitting
No,
back. And I
yeah.
don't think that's it. I think they're trying, and again, like I think some of these guys you can tell they're going to be part of the future. Some guys probably not, and they obviously have to make those decisions. But again, like when you have a guy who comes in here, and I mean he hasn't even been here 2 years. March, I think March 9th or 8th is going to be 2 years since he was hired. And that's just hired. That's not even like starting anything and all that stuff too. So
Mhm.
there's a lot and I think when you look at it, like I don't think there's should be a huge rush to make a deal right now. I'd rather them kind of play this season out, and again, like we've talked about it before, like all the dead money that they've had and things like that too, and whatnot. So again, I think they want to. I think they definitely want to make a move and make it a deal that can help them. But I'd rather be a little bit patient and kind of go from there too. So, but
Sure.
yeah. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, outside of that, that's pretty much it. All we got. Um, Let me ask you: we got the NFC Championship this week and AFC. Who you think's going to the Super Bowl?
Well, I would have liked to see my Lions playing the Eagles, that's for
Yeah.
sure. That was very disappointing. Then we'd really have something to talk
Yeah.
about, but
Right.
no, I think Eagles and Chiefs, I think so. I don't know, the Bills, no, I'm gonna go Eagles and Bills, I think. I think Eagle Bills are the
You got
final.
any sc- any
Yeah,
any
Eagles and
score
Bills.
predictions?
I think, Philly's at home, right?
Uh
So
huh.
I got them 24-10.
Okay.
24-10. I think Bills and Chiefs are gonna be like 49-42, something really good,
Yeah.
where they're just scoring like crazy,
Right.
And again, that'll depend on the weather. I think the game's in Kansas City, right? I mean, I don't know what the weather's gonna be there.
Right.
What's Philly gonna be? Is it be a little
They
better
said,
than it was last
yeah,
weekend?
no snow. They said it was going to be like 40. I think the wind gusts
That's
were like around
respectable,
like
yeah.
20,
Yeah.
30 miles an hour or something like that. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but windy, cold. I don't think any snow or rain or anything like last week, though.
Yeah. 24-10 Eagles and then 49-42 Bills.
Okay.
That's what I got.
Got the Bills. Yeah.
All right. I should write that down. I'm gonna write that
Yeah. There you
down.
go. I think the Eagles are going to win. Um, I think it's hard to beat the Eagles. There's a lot of things you gotta worry about. You have Hurts, you got the defense, Barkley, whatnot. And then I think Kansas City's going to win. I don't know. I think I was watching the game against the Texans and just the calls and whatnot. And I think there's something that's right there, Mike. I can't lie to you with Kansas City. I think they come off as like the new Patriots a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I mean that was crazy. Some of the penalties they call there, but I don't know. We'll see. But I think it's gonna be Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl. But we'll
Eagles,
see.
Chiefs. All right. I got Eagles, Bills. All
Yeah,
right.
I'd like to
All
see the
right.
rematch from a couple years ago. So we'll see.
Mhm,
See
mhm.
what happens.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
cool. Yeah, but thanks everybody again for all the support as always. Checking out Kickin' It With Knuble, and I got some stuff coming. I'm still working on some stuff for me and Mike to do towards the next couple of weeks here. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, talk to you guys all again next week. See you guys.
See ya.